Prince William has just delivered a blow that has left the royal family scrambling for balance and the public reeling with questions no one expected to ask this soon. The announcement itself was delivered with that familiar controlled tone he has perfected over the years, calm on the surface, deliberate in every word. But what landed was not calm. It was the kind of statement that does not simply update a diary of engagements. It redraws lines. It tells you who still sits inside the working structure of the monarchy and who has been quietly moved to the edges. And once you look past the polished language, the real story becomes clear. This was never just about one decision. It was about power, loyalty, inheritance, and the version of the future William is already building while his father still wears the crown. If you are still here and want the full picture of what this means for the family and the institution, hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next layer when it drops. What makes this so revealing is not the formal wording of the statement, it is the timing, the silence around it, and the way the palace machine has already started adjusting the narrative. William did not raise his voice. He did not point fingers in public. He simply made it known, through carefully chosen channels and a carefully worded confirmation, that certain bridges would not be rebuilt on his watch. The effect has been immediate. Privately, people close to the household are describing a shift in atmosphere that feels colder than anything seen since the early days of the Sussex departure. Publicly, the speculation is already racing ahead of the facts, which is exactly how these moments gain their force. Because in this family, an announcement is rarely just information. It is a signal, and this one signals that the heir has decided the future will not wait for emotional repair that he no longer believes is possible. You have to understand the ground this lands on. For years, the story has been framed as two brothers locked in a private war while the institution tries to keep the public face intact. King Charles has made gestures that looked, at least from the outside, like openings. Meetings arranged, security discussions held. Quiet hopes floated that time and duty might soften the hardest edges. William has never played along with that soft-focus version. His position has stayed consistent. Trust was broken, the institution was put at risk. And the cost of pretending otherwise is too high when you are the one who will eventually carry the full weight of the crown. So when the pressure came again, reportedly from the top, the response was not compromise, it was a clear, devastating line drawn in the sand. The announcement made that line visible to everyone. That is where this gets interesting, because on paper it looks like a family dispute that has simply refused to heal. Look closer and you see something more structural. William is not only protecting his own household, he is protecting the version of monarchy he intends to lead, a slimmed, focused, duty-first machine that cannot afford the constant media turbulence of unresolved personal battles. The image he projects has always been the modern heir who still understands old rules. Service first, stability first. The private pain stays private. When that private pain becomes a public industry, the heir has a choice. Soften and risk the institution looking weak, or harden the boundary and accept the emotional cost. He chose the harder option. And that choice is what has thrown the wider family into turmoil. Think about the people this lands on. King Charles has spent years trying to hold a fractured house together while managing his own health and the endless public scrutiny that comes with the role. His preference for reconciliation is not just sentiment, it is institutional strategy. A united front photographs better. It quiets the questions about whether the monarchy still functions as a coherent family business. When the heir refuses to fall into that strategy, the king is left looking less like the final authority and more like a father whose judgment is being second-guessed by the next generation. That is a dangerous optical shift inside a system built on hierarchy. The king remains the sovereign, but the future already belongs to William. Every time the two visions clash in public view, Even through carefully filtered reports, the institution looks less steady. Then there is the Sussex side of the equation. For Harry and Meghan, the announcement lands as confirmation of what they have long claimed, that the door was never truly open, that the family they left was never going to welcome them back on equal terms. Whether you believe their version or the palace version, the practical result is the same. The distance is no longer temporary, it is policy. And policy from the future king carries a different weight than policy from a wounded sibling. This is not two brothers still fighting over old grievances. This is the heir defining the working membership of the monarchy for the decades ahead. Blood remains blood. Access and status are something else entirely. Kate sits in the middle of this storm in a way that is easy to miss if you only watch the surface. She has always been the steady presence, the one who absorbs the pressure without adding to the noise. Her recovery, her return to public life, her quiet insistence on protecting the children from the worst of the adult drama, all of that forms the emotional backbone of the Wales household. When William draws a hard line, she is the one who has to live inside the consequences every day. The family gatherings that will never happen, the cousins who grow up knowing the fracture as normal, the public narrative that will keep circling the same wound. She represents the modern face of duty that still refuses to turn the private life into content. That contrast with the other side of the family is not accidental. It is part of the story William is telling about what the monarchy should look like under his watch. And then there are the children. Prince George is now at an age where the weight of the future is no longer abstract. 13 is young, but inside this family, it is already the beginning of preparation. Charlotte and Louis watch everything. They absorb the silences as clearly as the public statements. When an announcement like this lands, it does not just rearrange adult relationships. It teaches the next generation what loyalty looks like in practice. Who is inside? Who is managed at a distance? Who carries the institution? And who carries the personal cost? William has said more than once that he is determined to get their upbringing right. Part of that determination is shielding them from the chaos that defined his own younger years. The announcement is also a form of protection. It draws the boundary so the children do not grow up waiting for a reunion that he no longer believes will come. The deeper meaning sits right here. This is not really about whether two brothers can sit in the same room again. It is about whether the monarchy under William will continue to treat family fractures as temporary PR problems or as permanent structural facts. Old-school monarchy absorbed private pain and kept the public show running. Modern expectations demand transparency, emotional accountability, and the appearance of warmth. William is choosing a third path: controlled transparency, clear boundaries, duty that does not bend for the sake of optics. That path has a cost. It leaves the family looking colder. It hands critics a permanent talking point. It risks the next generation inheriting a thinner, more brittle institution. But it also removes the constant threat of the next revelation, the next interview, the next carefully timed book that turns private grievance into public business. Look at the ripple effects already moving through the household. Staff are adjusting language. Engagements are being planned with tighter circles. The public messaging around unity has softened into something more cautious. Even the softer stories, the birthday tributes, the climate work, the housing projects, now sit against this harder backdrop. Every warm image of the Wales family carries an unspoken contrast. Every report of Charles trying to keep doors open carries the weight of the heir's refusal. The institution is still functioning, the diary is full, the pageantry continues, but the emotional temperature has dropped, and everyone inside can feel it. What makes the whole thing sting is how ordinary the mechanism was. No grand speech from the balcony, no dramatic press conference, just a quiet confirmation that the future king will not be rewriting his principles to match his father's hopes. In most families, That would be a private conversation. In this family, it becomes a public realignment of power. Because the heir does not simply inherit titles and estates, he inherits the ability to decide whose presence strengthens the institution and whose presence complicates it. William has made that decision visible. The rest of the family is now living with the consequences. The contrast with the past is sharp. Elizabeth's reign was built on endurance and silence. Charles has tried to modernize while still holding the pieces together. William is signaling something different. A monarchy that will be smaller, more deliberate, less willing to absorb endless personal drama in the name of blood. Whether that vision strengthens the crown or leaves it more isolated is the question no one can answer yet. The announcement only tells us the direction of travel. The destination is still years away. And that is why the turmoil feels so unsettled. The surface event has already been absorbed into the news cycle. The statements have been parsed. The denials and non-denials have been issued. But the underlying shift remains. A future king has drawn a line that his father did not want drawn. A family that still has to photograph together on the biggest occasions now carries an open fracture into every calculation. The children are growing up inside that fracture. The institution is adjusting around it, and the public is left watching a system that looks simultaneously more modern and more brittle than it did a decade ago. Nothing is fully resolved. The announcement did not end the story. It simply made the next chapter clearer. The loyalty William is demanding is not the soft loyalty of shared blood. It is the harder loyalty of shared purpose and shared silence. Some will call that strength. Others will call it coldness. Both readings can be true at the same time. That is the nature of this family. Almost nothing stays small. Almost every private decision eventually becomes a public statement about the future of the crown. So what do you think this really means for the monarchy going forward? Does William's hard line protect the institution, or does it leave it more exposed than before? Drop your thoughts below. I want to know where you stand on this one.